Chaos swallowed the ballroom. People screamed. Glass shattered across the marble floor. Security rushed everywhere while guests pushed toward exits in panic. But Gabriel stood completely still. Because none of it compared to the storm exploding inside him. The memories would not stop now. Every second. Every year. Every moment with Naomi crashed back into him violently. The village. The mountains. The tiny wooden house. Naomi laughing while struggling to bake bread. Naomi crying beside his unconscious body. Naomi carrying him through rain while starving herself. And Leon. His son. Gabriel staggered backward, breathing unevenly. His chest physically hurt now. Not metaphorically. Actually hurt. Because memory did not return alone. It brought guilt with it. A terrifying amount of guilt. Gabriel. Vanessa grabbed his arm desperately. You're bleeding. Only then did Gabriel realize shattered glass had cut his hand. But he barely looked at it. His eyes were distant. Destroyed. Naomi. Vanessa froze. What? Gabriel looked at her finally. And for the first time, she understood something devastating. He was not looking at her like a man about to marry her. He was looking at her like someone who had just realized he belonged somewhere else entirely. I remember, he whispered weakly. The words made Vanessa's face slowly lose color. What do you mean you remember? Gabriel stepped away from her. Another memory crashing through him violently. Naomi whispering beside his unconscious body. I'll stay even if you never wake up. Gabriel shut his eyes tightly. A broken sound escaped his chest. Oh God. She stayed. While he forgot her. How long? He whispered shakily. Vanessa frowned in confusion. How long what? How long has she been gone? The desperation in his voice shocked everyone nearby. Eleanor appeared moments later, breathless from the panic downstairs. The moment she saw Gabriel's face, she understood instantly. You remember. Gabriel turned toward her slowly. His eyes already red. Already broken. All of it. Silence. Then Gabriel whispered the words that destroyed Eleanor completely. Why did you let her leave? Eleanor's face crumpled painfully. She believed you no longer loved her. Gabriel physically flinched. As if the sentence itself struck him. No. Another memory hit him. Naomi silently standing outside the room before leaving. Her trembling smile. Her heartbreak. Gabriel covered his face shakily. I did this to her. Nobody answered. Because nobody could deny it. That night, Gabriel locked himself inside his office alone. No staff. No assistants. No Vanessa. No business calls. Just silence. And memory. The rain outside reminded him of the village immediately. Everything reminded him of Naomi now. Gabriel slowly opened an old drawer. Inside. Leon's drawing remained exactly where he left it. His hands trembled violently as he picked it up again. The tiny house beneath stars. The smiling family. The happiness he forgot. And suddenly, another memory surfaced softly this time. Not painful. Not chaotic. Peaceful. Naomi sitting beside him outside their small house one quiet night. Stars above them. Leon asleep inside. Gabriel pulling her gently closer while she rested against his shoulder. You know what scares me? Naomi whispered softly. Gabriel smiled faintly. What? That one day you'll remember who you were before me. Gabriel frowned immediately. Naomi. She laughed softly. But there was sadness inside it. You belonged to another world before this one. Gabriel gently held her face then. Firmly. Seriously. No. He kissed her forehead softly beneath the stars. You are my world now. Naomi smiled through tears. Promise. Gabriel pulled her against him tightly. I promise. The memory ended. Gabriel broke completely. A raw, shattered sound escaped his chest as he lowered his head into trembling hands. Because now he understood the true horror of everything. He broke the one promise that mattered most. Not because he stopped loving her, but because fate made him forget. And Naomi suffered for it anyway. Across the city, Naomi sat awake again near the small apartment window. Sleep had become difficult lately. Ever since seeing Gabriel's engagement announcement. Something inside her refused to settle. Leon slept nearby peacefully after studying late. The little boy had grown taller recently. Smarter too. Too smart. Sometimes Naomi caught glimpses of Gabriel in him so clearly it hurt to breathe. A soft knock suddenly startled her. Naomi frowned immediately. It was late. Very late. Carefully, she stood and approached the door. Who is it? Silence. Then. A voice she had spent years loving. Years mourning. Years trying to forget. Naomi. Her entire body froze instantly. No. No, no, no. Her hand trembled violently against the doorknob. Because she knew that voice. Not the confused voice. Not the distant voice. Her Gabriel. And suddenly, she was terrified to open the door. Naomi could not move. Her hand remained frozen against the doorknob while her heartbeat pounded violently inside her chest. Outside the door, Gabriel waited silently. And suddenly, the tiny apartment felt too small to hold all the pain between them. Naomi. His voice broke slightly this time. And that alone nearly shattered her. Because she recognized it now. Not confusion. Not politeness. Love. Regret. Desperation. Naomi closed her eyes painfully. For one weak moment. She considered pretending she wasn't home. Pretending none of this was happening. Because if she opened that door, everything she spent months trying to survive would come rushing back. But fate had already decided for her. Behind her, Leon stirred awake from the noise. Mother. Naomi turned quickly. The little boy sat up sleepily rubbing his eyes. Then. He heard the voice outside too. And froze. Father. The word was barely a whisper. But Gabriel heard it immediately from outside. A broken sound escaped him softly. Leon. Naomi finally opened the door. Slowly. Carefully. And there he was. Gabriel stood in the dim hallway beneath weak apartment lights, rainwater still clinging to his coat. He looked exhausted. Destroyed. Not like a billionaire heir. Not like the powerful Gabriel Baker the world admired. Just a man who realized too late what he lost. The moment his eyes landed on Naomi, he broke. Because memory had not been kind to him. It forced him to relive everything. Her sacrifices. Her tears. Her loneliness. The moment she walked away silently. And now seeing her again. Standing in a tiny apartment after everything she endured. Filled him with unbearable shame. Naomi stared at him silently. Neither of them spoke. Because some grief is too large for immediate words. Then Gabriel finally whispered. I remember. Naomi's eyes instantly filled with tears. Those two words. The words she prayed to hear for months. Arrived too late. Far too late. Gabriel stepped forward carefully. Almost fearfully. Naomi. But Naomi instinctively stepped back. The movement hit Gabriel like a knife. Because he finally understood what his forgetting had done. He made the woman who loved him afraid to trust him again. I'm sorry, he whispered shakily. And suddenly, everything inside Naomi exploded. You're sorry, she repeated weakly. Tears spilled immediately down her face now. I buried you while you were still alive. Gabriel physically flinched. Naomi's voice trembled violently as years of pain finally escaped. I waited for you for years. Her breathing became uneven. I carried you through villages. I starved beside you. I begged heaven every night to wake you up. Gabriel lowered his eyes immediately, unable to look at her pain directly. And when you finally opened your eyes, Naomi's voice broke completely. You looked at me like I was nobody. Silence consumed the hallway. Heavy. Merciless. Gabriel felt every word tear through him. Because none of it was exaggerated. Every bit of pain was real. And he caused it. Even unintentionally. I know, he whispered painfully. No, Naomi snapped suddenly through tears. You don't know. Gabriel looked at her again. And what he saw destroyed him. Naomi looked exhausted in ways sleep could never fix. The kind of exhaustion caused by carrying too much suffering alone for too long. And somehow, he had become part of that suffering. Behind Naomi, Leon slowly stood from the bed, watching both of them silently. Hope and fear fighting inside his young eyes. Gabriel looked toward him carefully. Then whispered shakily. Son. Leon's face crumpled instantly. That one word. The word he waited months to hear. The little boy immediately burst into tears. Gabriel dropped to his knees without thinking. Leon. His voice shattered completely now. I'm sorry. Leon ran into his arms instantly. Hard. Desperate. And Gabriel finally held his son again. Really held him. The warmth. The small trembling body. The familiar feeling. Everything returned so painfully it nearly crushed him alive. Gabriel held Leon tighter while tears streamed uncontrollably down his face. I remember you, he whispered brokenly. I remember everything. Leon cried harder against him. I thought you didn't want us anymore. That sentence destroyed Gabriel completely. He shook his head desperately. No. His voice cracked violently. Never. Naomi turned away immediately, covering her mouth as she broke down crying again. Because seeing them together hurt almost as much as losing them. Gabriel slowly stood again while holding Leon carefully. Then looked toward Naomi. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Naomi remained silent. Trembling. But please. His voice broke again. Don't shut me out now that I finally found my way back to you. Silence filled the room. Rain continued falling softly outside while years of pain stood between them. Naomi looked at Gabriel for a very long time. Really looked at him. And for the first time since he lost his memory, she saw it clearly again. Her Gabriel. Not the billionaire. Not the heir. The man who once promised her forever beneath stars. And somehow, that realization terrified her most of all. Because despite everything, she still loved him. Love did not fix everything overnight. That was the cruel truth Gabriel learned first. Remembering Naomi did not erase her pain. Remembering Leon did not erase the months they spent believing he no longer wanted them. And memory returning did not undo the damage. The next morning felt painfully awkward. Gabriel barely slept. Not because he wanted rest. Because every time he closed his eyes, guilt dragged him back awake again. Naomi moved quietly around the apartment preparing breakfast while avoiding his eyes. Not cold. Not cruel. Just careful. As if getting too close to him again might reopen wounds she barely survived the first time. And honestly, Gabriel understood why. Leon sat beside him eating quietly, still occasionally staring at Gabriel like he was afraid he might disappear again. That look alone nearly destroyed Gabriel every single time. You should eat more, Gabriel whispered softly. Leon smiled shyly. You remembered that I hate vegetables. Gabriel froze instantly. Then laughed weakly through tears. Because he did remember. Leon hiding vegetables beneath rice. Naomi pretending not to notice. Their tiny house filled with laughter. The memory hurt beautifully. Naomi quietly looked away the moment she heard Gabriel laugh. Because she missed that sound more than she ever admitted. But missing someone and trusting them again were not the same thing. Later that day, Gabriel stood alone outside the apartment building while his driver waited nearby. The black luxury car looked absurd parked beside the poor neighborhood. Like another world invading theirs again. Gabriel stared at it silently. Then turned toward his driver. "Take it back." The driver blinked in confusion. "Sir. I'm not using it." "But Mr. Baker." Gabriel's voice hardened slightly. "I said take it back." The driver immediately obeyed. Gabriel watched the car disappear slowly down the road. Because suddenly, everything connected to his old life felt unbearable. How could he return comfortably to luxury knowing Naomi suffered alone for years? How could he sit in boardrooms while remembering Leon searching markets for discarded vegetables? The guilt followed him everywhere now. Relentlessly. And the worst part? Naomi still protected him. Even after everything. That realization broke him repeatedly. Days passed. Gabriel refused to leave them. Not aggressively. Not forcefully. Just quietly. Patiently. He repaired broken shelves in the apartment. Cooked badly while Leon laughed at him. Walked Leon to school. Tiny things. Simple things. But to Gabriel, they mattered more than billion-dollar meetings ever had. Still, Naomi remained emotionally distant. Not because she stopped loving him. Because loving him hurt now. One evening, Gabriel found her sitting alone outside the apartment building after Leon fell asleep. The city lights flickered weakly around them. For a long moment, he simply sat beside her silently. Then finally, "You lost weight." Naomi almost laughed softly. "That's what you noticed?" Gabriel lowered his eyes painfully. "No." A pause. "It's just one of the things I can't forgive myself for." Silence settled heavily between them. Then Naomi finally whispered the question she had been avoiding. "Are you going back?" Gabriel looked at her immediately. "To the Baker Empire." The question carried more fear than she intended. Because deep down, Naomi already knew the answer. People like Gabriel belong to worlds bigger than tiny apartments and struggling lives. Didn't they? Gabriel studied her carefully. Then quietly asked, "Do you want me to?" Naomi froze slightly. Because she didn't know. Part of her wanted to keep him beside them forever. Another part feared losing him to that world all over again. "You have responsibilities," she whispered carefully. Gabriel laughed bitterly. "I had responsibilities here first." Naomi's chest tightened painfully. Because months ago. Those were the exact words she needed to hear. But now. Trust came slower. Much slower. Meanwhile, the Baker Empire slowly began collapsing into chaos without Gabriel's full attention. Executives panicked. Investors questioned leadership. The media exploded with rumors after Gabriel abruptly canceled his engagement with Vanessa. And worst of all, Benson saw opportunity. Again. Inside a large office downtown, Benson stared coldly at reports spread across the table. He abandoned another major meeting. An executive nodded nervously. "He's barely returning calls." Benson smiled faintly. Dangerously. All because of that woman. Hatred flickered briefly across his face. Years ago, Gabriel disappeared and nearly destroyed the family structure. Now, love was making him weak again. And Benson intended to use that weakness. Back at the apartment, Gabriel stood quietly watching Naomi so late into the night. The same exhausted posture. The same tired hands. His chest hurt every time he looked at her now. Because memory returned with details. Painful details. Naomi secretly skipping meals. Naomi crying beside his unconscious body while thinking he couldn't hear her. Naomi whispering, "I'm scared." Gabriel closed his eyes tightly. "How did you survive all that?" he whispered softly. Naomi paused briefly. Then continued sewing. I didn't have a choice. That answer shattered him more than tears ever could. Because she was right. She survived because nobody else carried the burden for her. And suddenly Gabriel realized something horrifying. Naomi spent years searching for ways to save him, while he now found himself searching desperately for ways to deserve her again. And that search was slowly destroying him. The boardroom fell silent the moment Gabriel entered. Executives straightened immediately. Assistants hurried nervously. Investors watched him carefully. The missing heir had returned. Again. But something about him felt different now. Dangerously different. Gone was the polished billionaire who once cared about appearances and strategy above everything else. This Gabriel looked tired. Sharper. Colder in some ways. And strangely, less impressed by power. Gabriel took his seat quietly at the head of the long table. The same seat everyone once believed belonged to Benson permanently. Benson smiled faintly across from him. Controlled. Polite. Good to finally have you back, he said smoothly. Gabriel looked at him for a long moment. Then replied calmly. I was never really gone. Something uncomfortable shifted across the room immediately. Because everyone knew now. At least partially. The truth about Gabriel's disappearance had begun spreading quietly through powerful circles. And Benson's name followed those whispers more each day. But Gabriel did not expose him publicly yet. Not because he forgave him. Because he no longer cared about revenge the way he once might have. Strangely, Naomi had changed him even there. Gabriel opened the documents before him slowly. Financial reports. Expansion plans. Market projections. Things that once consumed his entire life. Now, they felt empty. Because while everyone else in the room saw billions of dollars, Gabriel kept seeing Naomi sewing late into the night. Leon pretending not to be hungry. The tiny apartment. The years they suffered without him. And suddenly, wealth looked embarrassingly small beside that pain. Mr. Baker. Gabriel blinked slightly. An executive was speaking nervously. We need approval for the Crawford merger. Vanessa's family. The cancelled engagement still dominated headlines. Investors hated uncertainty. Gabriel leaned back silently. Then calmly said, no. The room froze. Benson frowned immediately. The merger is strategically important. Gabriel looked directly at him. Not everything important is strategic. Silence. Because that sentence did not sound like the old Gabriel Baker at all. Benson narrowed his eyes carefully. You're risking the company over emotions. Gabriel almost smiled. Not kindly. No. A pause. I'm finally seeing what matters. The meeting ended tensely after that. Executives whispered nervously while Gabriel walked out without another word. For the first time in years, the Baker empire no longer controlled him. And that terrified everyone. Outside the building, reporters immediately rushed toward him. Cameras flashed violently. Mr. Baker. Is it true you cancelled the wedding because of another woman? Are the rumors about your hidden family true? Did memory loss affect your leadership decisions? Gabriel stopped walking. His security team immediately became alert. But Gabriel slowly turned toward the reporters instead. 4 months. 4 years. Naomi and Leon lived like shadows while the world celebrated his return. Not anymore. Yes, Gabriel said calmly. The reporters froze instantly. I do have a family. Cameras flashed faster now. Chaos exploded around him. And everything I became during the years I disappeared. Gabriel's voice softened slightly. Happened because of them. Some reporters shouted more questions immediately. Who is the woman? Are you secretly married? Gabriel stared toward the distant city quietly for a moment. Then finally answered. The woman who saved my life. And with that, he walked away. Across the city, Naomi nearly dropped the fabric in her hands when the tailoring shop television suddenly switched to breaking news. Gabriel's face appeared instantly on screen. Calm. Controlled. But his words shattered her completely. The woman who saved my life. The women inside the shop immediately exploded with gossip. Wait, isn't that him? The billionaire heir? Oh my God. Naomi stood frozen, her chest tightening painfully. Because for the first time since everything happened, Gabriel was no longer hiding them. And somehow, that scared her. That evening, Gabriel returned to the apartment exhausted. The media had become unbearable. Phones non-stop. Investors panicking. The family furious. But the moment he stepped inside and saw Leon asleep beside Naomi while she quietly read near the dim lamp, everything else disappeared. Home. Not the mansion. Not the empire. This. Naomi looked up slowly when he entered. Their eyes met quietly across the room. You caused chaos today, she whispered softly. Gabriel loosened his tie tiredly. Good. Naomi almost smiled despite herself. Almost. Gabriel sat beside her quietly. Closer this time. Then softly admitted something he had never said out loud before. When I lost my memory. He stared ahead silently. I thought the empire was the most important thing I'd forgotten. Naomi listened quietly. Gabriel turned toward her slowly. But it wasn't. His voice lowered painfully. It was you. Naomi immediately looked away as tears gathered in her eyes again. Because after everything, those words still affected her. Gabriel reached for her hand carefully. Slowly. Giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But this time, she didn't. And that tiny moment nearly broke him emotionally. Because after all the pain, after all the damage, Naomi was still trying. Even if she was scared. Gabriel gently held her hand tighter. Then whispered the truth that had been destroying him for months. I spent years unconscious. A pause. But losing you felt worse. Naomi finally broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly leaning against him while tears slipped silently down her face. And for the first time since his memories returned, Gabriel held her again. Not as a stranger. Not as a confused man. As her husband. Outside, the city still chased power. Money. Control. But inside that tiny apartment, Gabriel finally understood something the empire could never teach him. Love was the only thing that still mattered after losing everything else. 10 years later, the city had changed. New skyscrapers touched the clouds. Technology evolved. Power shifted between new billionaires and fading empires. But some things remained untouched by time. Like regret. Like love. And like promises made beneath stars. The grand auditorium buzzed with excitement as cameras flashed rapidly across the stage. Students from across the country sat nervously waiting for the final results of the National Young Innovators Competition. At the center of it all stood a tall young man adjusting his glasses calmly while reporters whispered nearby. Isn't that the baker heir's son? They say he built the entire project himself. He looks exactly like Gabriel. Leon smiled awkwardly under the attention. He had never fully gotten used to fame. Unlike his father. At 17, Leon carried both Naomi's quiet heart and Gabriel's sharp intelligence. A dangerous combination. Relax, Gabriel whispered beside him softly. Leon looked sideways immediately. You're more nervous than I am. Gabriel laughed quietly. That's because I know how stubborn you are when you want something. Leon smirked slightly. Mother says I got that from you. Gabriel froze briefly. Then smiled softly. Your mother says a lot of dangerous truths. Across the auditorium, Naomi rolled her eyes the moment she overheard them. Even after all these years, Gabriel still looked at her like a man who couldn't believe she stayed. And honestly, sometimes Naomi still couldn't believe it either. The years after his memories returned had not been easy. Love came back quickly. Trust did not. There were arguments. Painful conversations. Nights Naomi cried remembering the loneliness. Moments Gabriel hated himself for things he couldn't control. But somehow, they survived it. Together. Because this time, Gabriel refused to let her carry pain alone. And Naomi slowly learned that loving someone again did not make her weak. It made her brave. First place. The announcer's voice echoed loudly through the auditorium. Leon Baker. The crowd exploded instantly. Applause. Cheers. Camera flashes everywhere. Leon froze briefly in shock before the audience rose to its feet applauding loudly. Naomi covered her mouth emotionally as tears immediately filled her eyes. Gabriel looked even worse. Because the little boy who once searched markets for discarded vegetables now stood on stage being celebrated by the entire country. And suddenly, Gabriel couldn't breathe properly. Not from sadness. From overwhelming gratitude. Leon looked toward them immediately from the stage. Toward his parents. And smiled. The same bright smile he had as a child. Only stronger now. Gabriel immediately reached for Naomi's hand tightly. "We made it," he whispered emotionally. Naomi laughed softly through tears. "No," she corrected gently. She looked toward Leon proudly. "He made it." Gabriel shook his head slowly. "He survived because you did." Naomi looked at him quietly. And after all these years, those words still carried weight. Because Gabriel never forgot. Not the village. Not the hunger. Not her suffering. Not the years she carried him. Sometimes Naomi caught him staring at her silently late at night with guilt still hidden inside his eyes. And every single time, she reminded him of the same thing. "You came back." Because in the end, he did. Later that evening, after the celebration finally ended, the three of them quietly escaped the media attention and drove away from the city. Not toward the Baker mansion. Toward the mountains. Toward the village. The old place barely remained now. Most people had moved away years ago. Nature slowly reclaimed the land. But one thing still stood. Their tiny house. Gabriel restored it secretly years ago. Not perfectly. Not luxuriously. Just enough to preserve the life that saved him. Naomi smiled softly the moment she stepped inside again. The wooden walls. The old stove. The small window near the table. Memories wrapped around them instantly. Warm. Painful. Beautiful. Leon wandered around curiously while laughing softly. "So this is where everything started?" Gabriel nodded quietly. "This is where I became human." Naomi looked at him immediately after hearing that. Because deep down, she understood exactly what he meant. The billionaire heir died in this village. And the man she loved was born there instead. That night, the three of them sat outside beneath the stars while cool mountain wind moved softly through the trees. Exactly like years ago. Leon eventually fell asleep near the fire after hours of talking and laughing. And for a long moment, Gabriel simply stared at Naomi silently. "What?" she whispered shyly. Gabriel smiled faintly. "You still look at the stars when you're thinking too much." Naomi laughed softly. "And you still notice everything about me." Gabriel's expression slowly changed after that. Softer. Deeper. Then quietly. He reached into his pocket. Naomi frowned slightly. "Gabriel." He pulled out something small. Carefully preserved despite time. Leon's old drawing. The tiny house beneath stars. The family holding hands. Naomi's eyes instantly filled with tears. "You kept it." Gabriel nodded slowly. "It brought me back to you." Silence settled softly around them. Then Gabriel looked up toward the stars. The same stars beneath which he once made a promise he failed to keep. I used to hate myself for forgetting, he whispered quietly. Naomi reached for his hand immediately. But now. Gabriel looked at her. Really looked at her. I think fate wanted me to learn something first. Naomi frowned slightly. What? Gabriel smiled weakly. That love isn't memory. A pause. It's choice. Tears slid silently down Naomi's cheeks. Because after everything they survived, he still chose her. Every single day. Gabriel gently kissed her forehead beneath the stars. Exactly like he did years ago. Then softly whispered the words that finally fulfilled the promise fate once stole from them. You are still my world. Naomi broke into tears immediately while laughing softly at the same time. And Gabriel held her close beneath the stars that once witnessed both their tragedy. And now finally witnessed their peace. Far away, the city still chased power and money. But here. Inside the mountains where suffering once nearly destroyed them. 3 broken people finally became whole again. And the forgotten promise? It was never truly forgotten.